Namaste, aloha, and welcome again back to the Krishna book reading number 24. We are reading from the Krishna book, which is the 10th canto synopsis of the Srimad Bhagavatam, as originally compiled by Srila Vyasadeva and translated in this case and purported upon by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who at the time wrote the Krishna book because he wanted to give the synopsis of the 10th canto, which is the cream, the pinnacle of the Srimad Bhagavatam with Krishna's pastimes. But at the same time, he also wanted to put in the philosophy of the 9 other cantos in order to help surmise, because it actually says in the Srimad Bhagavatam that you should start from the beginning and read all the way through and don't jump ahead. So that was his point. But he was very old when he had done this, so he didn't know if he was going to live. He actually went on to actually translate and purport upon up to the 10th canto. There are 12 cantos total in Srimad Bhagavatam, but that's as far as he got. So we are going to get right into the kirtan. Sorry, last time I was getting a phone call and I didn't really want to redo my whole class, so we cut it short without the kirtan. So we'll just get right into the kirtan right now. Let me offer my respectful obeisances to my spiritual master, Jagat Guru Siddha Swarupananda Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Siddha Swarupananda Paramamsa Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Siddha Swarupananda Paramamsa Raja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vas Adi Gaur Bhakta Raja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, Haribol. So welcome back. We are reading from the cursing of Manigriva and Nalakuvara, or it's cursing of Nalakuvara and Manigriva, I think, actually. We're just continuing the story. So a brief synopsis. We had just come out of the story of Krishna getting bound by Mother Yashoda, and he saw, there are some Arjuna trees out there. And he knows everything because he's a Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he knew that the Arjuna trees were the two sons of Kuvera who had been cursed by his pure devotee, Narada Muni. It's all part of Krishna's plan. And we had also addressed the point about why the two sons had been cursed. They had been out in this heavenly planet area of Lord Shiva, and were sporting as they do as the sons of Kuvera, who have great wealth, and their family has great wealth. And people oftentimes, if they have a lot of money, they will gamble or enjoy sex enjoyment or drink or whatever, they would do with their money. And so that's what they were doing. They were with some young girls in the water, and they were drinking alcohol, and they were intoxicated. And we were just addressing the point that Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada said that this idea, this mentality of material enjoyment as being the prime level of happiness, when actually anyone who's really fully engaged in that, or sometimes have come out on the other end bruised and beaten quite a bit, drinking alcohol or using drugs because you just really want to be happy, and that's a natural state. That stated being of happiness is a natural state of the living entity of happiness, of bliss and enjoyment. It says in the Bhagavad Gita that the living entity is brilliant, like a diamond. It's brilliant. He's Satchidananda, eternal form of Satchidananda Vigraha, eternal form of bliss and happiness, joy. But in the material element, we have very little bit of enjoyment because we're like a fish out of water. We're in the wrong sort of situation. And so this situation, even though in the heavenly planets, the propensity for enjoyment is very high, much higher than the material world. The material world is actually a good place per se to try to enjoy it, to learn about spiritual enlightenment, because in the human form of life, there's only a certain amount of enjoyment you can get, and it's not a whole lot. Usually, a lot of people they don't enjoy it all. They suffer. In fact, most so-called enjoyment is actually just relief from your suffering. If If you're tired, you lie down and go to sleep. You enjoy your sleep because you're tired. You're hungry, you're relieving your pain of hunger. So there's very, very little enjoyment that goes on in the material world. There is some, but not a whole lot. But in the heavenly planets, in the higher place where the demigods, their enjoyment is much, much higher. So they actually pray to be born as humans, because then they won't be distracted as these two sons were. And so Narada Muni saw them, and as a great saint, it's very offensive to be doing such things in the presence of such an elevated devotee. But they were so proud and puffed up and drunk that they just didn't, So, and the girls that were smart enough, they just got out of there. But so Narada decided to curse them and turn them into Arjuna trees, which was, as we see in the story here, will be for their benefit. A person who has a pin prick in his body does not wish others to be pricked by pins. A considerate man in the life of poverty does not wish others to be also put into that condition. Generally, it is seen that one who has risen from a poverty-stricken life and becomes wealthy creates some charitable institution at the end of his life so that other poverty-stricken men might be benefited. In short, a compassionate poor man may consider others' pains and pleasures with empathy. A poor man may be seldom puffed with false pride, and he may be freed from all kinds of infatuation. He may remain satisfied by whatever he gets for his maintenance by the grace of the Lord. Sometimes they just want what the rich people have, and they envy what they have. But anyone with smart intelligence, with intelligence, will know that if they have very little, they've strived hard to try to get enough to be sustainable, and so they probably a lot of times look down on people who are very wealthy, in the sense that, and just like lazy with their wealth. They're not using it for anything good, but other than just their own sense enjoyment and just thinking that they're a great person. To remain in the poverty-stricken condition is a kind of austerity. According to Vedic culture, therefore, the Brahmanas, as a matter of routine, keep themselves in a poverty-stricken condition to save themselves from the false prestige of material opulence. False prestige due to advancement of material prosperity is a great impediment for spiritual emancipation. A poverty-stricken man cannot become unnaturally fat by eating more and more. And on account of not being able to eat more than he requires, his senses are not very turbulent. When the senses are not very turbulent, he cannot become violent. Another advantage of poverty is that a saintly person can easily enter a poor man's house, and thus the poor man can take advantage of the saintly person's association. A very opulent man does not allow anyone to enter his house, therefore the saintly person cannot enter. According to the Vedic system, a saintly person takes the position of a mendicant, so that on the plea of begging something from the householder, he can enter any house. The householder, who has usually forgotten everything about spiritual advancement because he is busy maintaining family affairs, can be benefited by the association of a saintly person. There is great chance for the poor man to become liberated through association with a saint. Of what use are persons who are puffed up with material opulence and prestige if they are bereft of the association of saintly persons and devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? So yes, this is a very important point. We talked about householders who have a certain amount of sense enjoyment in their life already, and so saintly people would come to their house and remind them of the purpose of life. And so there are people who have wealth who don't become attached to their wealth, but it's a very attractive thing to have. And there are stories actually in the Krishna book where some great saints have gotten wealth and they just use it. They're not attached to it, but they just use it in the service of Krishna. Even great kings like Maharaj Yudhishthira had more wealth than the creator of the universe. He was so wealthy as the emperor of the world, but he was not attached to it anyways. And many of these kings, these saintly kings, had great wealth, because they had a duty as a king to be wealthy and help distribute money to the people and all that. But then at the end of their time, when they were done, they would just take off their robe and just walk away from it and go off to the forest to meditate with just a loincloth. So they weren't really attached. Many of these great saintly kings like Maharaj Parikshit and King Maharaj Yudhisthira and many others were not attached to their material wealth. Not like, like Elon Musk or something, you ask him, okay, go off to the forest and leave your billions behind. No, they're very attached. They want to send rocket ships up in the air with their names and on it and say, look at me, woo, look how wealthy I am. So, that's very telling. The great sage Narada thereafter thought that it was his duty to put these demigods into a condition where they could not be falsely proud of their material opulence and prestige. Narada was compassionate and wanted to save them from their fallen life. They were in the mode of darkness, which is considered the mode of ignorance, right? And being therefore unable to control their senses, they were addicted to sex life. It was the duty of a saintly person like Narada to save them from their abominable condition. So people who enter into these different modes of ignorance, modes of passion, especially in mode of ignorance, mode of passion too, but it's like entering a strong current of water and just saying, oh, I'll be okay, I can just swim to the other side, but you just sort of like, we can all relate to the situation, like maybe somebody made us really, really angry and we were so furious, we were yelling and we were just thinking about it. We could feel that heat of anger. Anger is in the mode of passion because we really wanted something. We wanted to control that situation. We didn't like the way it turned out and we want to be the controller, and so we get swept into that. Or maybe you wake up in the morning, all these modes all operate throughout the day sometimes, and they're natural. Sometimes they happen for a reason, like you come towards the end of the day and you start entering into the mode of ignorance because you've got to go to sleep, and sleep is considered in the mode of ignorance. If you weren't in the mode of ignorance, you would never get some sleep, so your body is regulated that way. So the modes do influence things, or we have mode of passion sometimes to be able to get things done, or for Krishna or whatever. But ultimately, a lot of these things are 99.9999% of the time affecting us through foods, through our activity, through the musics we listen or the things we read, or everything. And we think, oh, that's just me, but it's not me. It's part of the material energy that is affecting us. And oftentimes people have been in the mode of passion and been so angry they see red, right? They beat somebody up and then they think, oh my God. And they come out of it and they go, oh my God, how did that happen? God, I was so angry, but why did I do that? And then it's just so Narada was compassionate and wanted to save them from their fallen life. They were in the mode of darkness, and being therefore unable to control their senses, they were addicted to sex life. It was the duty of saintly persons like Narada to save them from their abominable condition. And literally that's an abominable condition. If you really analyze it, even from a society point of view, there are people who are heavily addicted to pornography, or addicted to sexual activities, or addicted to pedophilia or whatever. They can't get out of that. They're like, so it's dominating their minds, and it ruins everything around them. It ruins their life. You can ruin their family life, and you lose your friends, and you ruin other people's lives, and you ultimately could go to jail for such a thing too. A lot of times people do, and it's an abominable condition, as Bhaktivedanta says. And Narada Muni saw that you enter a hellish existence. You may be a demigod in this life, but being addicted to sex life can send you to the hellish planets. It'll send you into a hellish condition in your next life as a worm or something. So this is a very strong reality. It takes you far, far away from your remembering Krishna. In animal life, the animal has no sense to understand that he is naked, but Kuvera was the treasurer of the demigods, a very responsible man, and Nalu Kuvara and Manigriva were two of his sons, and yet they had become so animalistic and irresponsible that they could not understand, due to intoxication, that they were naked. To cover the lower part of the body is a principle of human civilization, and when a man or woman forgets this principle, they become degraded. Narada therefore thought it was the best punishment for them was to make them immovable living entities, or trees. Trees are, by nature's law, immovable. Although trees are covered by the mote of ignorance, they can do no harm. The great sage Narada thought it fitting that, although the brothers by his mercy would be punished to become trees, they would continue to keep their memory to be able to know why they were being punished. After changing the body, a living entity generally forgets his previous life, but in special cases, by the grace of the Lord, as with Nalakavara and Manigriva, one can remember. So we've moved through many, many lifetimes. We've had many, many wives and husbands, and we've been many, many children, and we've been in many forms of life, including trees and animals and bugs, and for millions and millions of lifetimes. But every time we come to it, we don't remember it. We just remember this lifetime. So we just do it again. Although there are cases, sometimes people do remember, but it's not really a great thing to remember. People are like, oh, that'd be great if I could remember what I was like, my previous life and blah, blah, blah. But what if you were a murderer in your previous life? Something like, so that in many cases we probably were. So that's this is what he was saying. But in this case, Narada Muni made it so that they would remember. They would remember and reflect on it. Sage Narada therefore contemplated that the two demigods should remain for 100 years in the time of the demigods in the form of trees, and after that they would be fortunate enough to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face by his causeless mercy, and thus they would be again promoted to the life of the demigod and great devotees of the Lord. And demigods are supposed to be devotees of the Lord, but they do forget because they're in a situation where they're enjoying things very much, or they get puffed up, as many of the stories you'll see where the demigods, even though they're living entities in powerful positions, they are powerful positions. They may be the king of heaven, or they may be the superintendent of death, or whatever they might be. They have a powerful position. They start to think that they are the all in all. So, or at least the enjoyer, right? Not devotees of Krishna. After this, the great sage Narada returned to his abode known as Narayan Ashram, and the two demigods turned into trees known as twin Arjuna trees. The two demigods were favored by the causeless mercy of Narada and given a chance to grow in Nanda's courtyard to see Lord Krishna face to face. Although the child Krishna was bound up to the wooden mortar, he began to proceed toward the growing trees in order to fulfill the prophecy of his great devotee and that the trees standing before him as twin Arjuna trees were actually the sons of Kuvara. I must now fulfill. Let me start from that. Although the child Krishna was bound up with the wooden mortar, he began to proceed toward the growing trees in order to fulfill the prophecy of his great devotee Narada. Lord Krishna knew that Narada was his great devotee and that the trees standing before him as twin Arjuna trees were actually the sons of Kuvara. Of course he knew that. He's the Supreme Personality of God, and he knows all these things. I must now fulfill the words of my great devotee Narada, he thought. Then he began to proceed through the passage between the two trees. Although he was able to pass through the passage, the large wooden mortar stuck horizontally between the trees. Taking advantage of this, Lord Krishna began to pull the rope which was tied to the mortar. As soon as he pulled with great strength, the two trees, with all branches and limbs, fell down immediately with a great sound. Out of the broken fallen trees came two great personalities shining like blazing fire. All sides became illuminated and beautiful by their presence. The two purified bodies immediately came before child Krishna and bowed down to offer their respects and prayers in the following words. Dear Lord Krishna, you are the original personality of Godhead, master of all mystic powers. Learned Brahmanas know very well that this cosmic manifestation is an expansion of your potencies, which are sometimes manifest and sometimes unmanifest. You are the original provider of the life, body, and senses of all living entities. You are the eternal God, Lord Vishnu, who is all-pervading, the principal controller of everything. You are the original source of the cosmic manifestation, which is acting under the spell of the three modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance. You are living as the supersoul in all the multi-forms of living entities, and you know very well what is going on within their bodies and minds. Therefore, you are the supreme director of all activities of all living entities. So Krishna is able to simultaneously be within the heart of every living entity in all the universes, expanded in everyone. So he travels with that lost soul, the lost soul, through the material world. And I think we had previously, if you haven't seen it, there's one that has the two birds. We talked about the two birds, the super soul, and the Jivatma, this individual soul, as two birds, one bird enjoying the fruit on a tree. In other words, the living entity trying to enjoy the fruits of the material nature, and the other, the Paramatma, this expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in your heart, standing with you, standing behind you, waiting for you to turn around, reminding you, always reminding you. So it's like, sometimes people say, oh, I have this little voice in my head. That's, it's this, or my conscience. Yeah, because Krishna is always reminding. He doesn't force us to turn around and love him, but he reminds us that we are in the wrong place. We are not happy here. And deep down we know that's true. But under the modes of material nature, we tend to think of ourselves as the controllers and enjoyers. And just looking at a time here. So I'll continue here. You are living as a super soul in all the multi-forms of living entities, and you know very well what is going on in their bodies and minds. Krishna knows everything. That you're never alone. He always knows. He always knows. He always knows what you want. All you have to do is reach out to him, and he will connect with you. Therefore, you are the supreme director of all activities of all living entities. But although you are in the midst of everything which is under the spell of the material modes of nature, you are not affected by such contaminated qualities. Here I am reinforcing, contrary to what we were talking about, Mayavadi philosophy, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, does not come under his inferior energies. He's not affected when he enters into the material world, when he expands into the heart. He is completely Satchidananda Vigraha, eternally. No one under your jurisdiction, the material modes, can understand your transcendental qualities which existed before the creation. Therefore, you are called the Supreme Brahman, who is always glorified by his personal internal potencies. In this material world, you can be known only by your different incarnations. Although you assume different types of bodies, these bodies are not part of the material creation. So the different incarnations that you read about in the Srimad Bhagavatam, some of them may be mentioned in the Krishna book, but they're most likely going to be mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And all the stories will be there. They're different of Krishna's, different incarnations. They are always full of transcendental potencies, unlimited opulence, strength, beauty, fame, wisdom, and renunciation. Those are the 6 opulences that we talked about before that Krishna has in full. In the material existence, there is a difference between the body and the owner of the body, but because you appear in your original spiritual body, there is no such difference for you. When you appear, your uncommon activities indicate that you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such uncommon activities are not possible for anyone in material existence. Okay, we got one more page. I think we're just going to get through this. You are that supreme personality of Godhead, now appearing to cause the birth and death as well as liberation of the living entities. And you are full with all your plenary expansions. You can bestow on everyone all kinds of benediction. O Lord, O source of all fortune and goodness, we offer our respectful obeisances unto you. You are the all-pervading supreme personality of Godhead, the source of peace and the supreme person in the dynasty of King Yadu. O Lord, our Father, known as Kuvera, the demigod, is your servant. Similarly, the great sage Narada is also your servitor, and by their grace only we have been able to see you personally. An important point, I would love to talk about it more, but by the grace of the, so it's also said by the grace of God one gets guru, and by the grace of guru one gets God. We therefore pray that we may always be engaged in your transcendental loving service by speaking only about your glories and hearing about your transcendental activities. May our hands and other limbs be engaged in your service, and our minds always be concentrated at your lotus feet, and our heads always be bowed down before the all-pervading universal form of your lordship. When the demigods Nala, Kuvara, and Manigriva finished their prayers, the child Lord Krishna, the master and proprietor of Gokula, bound to the wooden grinding mortar by the ropes of Yashoda, began to smile and said, "It was already known to me that my great devotee sage Narada had shown his causeless mercy by saving you from the abominable condition of pride, due to possessing extraordinary beauty and opulence in the family of demigods." So we talked about that before. One becomes very proud by the things that they have, beauty, but these things quickly wane. Even if we have them for our whole life, even if we have wealth our whole life, it's at the end of the life, it's checked out. It's like those old sweepstakes that you used to have, where you would like get 5 minutes in the supermarket to put as much stuff in your carts, and then take it home. You can get all that stuff and take it home. But in the case of life, you do that and you get to the door and they take it all away from you. So they take your body away too. He has saved you from gliding down into the lowest condition of hellish life. All these facts are already known to me. You are very fortunate because you were not only cursed by him, but you had the great opportunity to see him. If someone is able by chance to see a saintly person like Narada face to face, who is always serene and merciful to everyone, then immediately that conditioned soul becomes liberated. This is exactly like being situated in the full light of the sun. There cannot be any visionary impediment. Therefore, O Nala, Kuvara, and Manigriva, your lives have now become successful because you have developed ecstatic love for me. That's the goal of life, right there. This is your last birth within material existence. Now you can go back to your Father's residence in the heavenly planet, and by remaining in the attitude of devotional service, you will be liberated in this very life. After this, the demigods circumambulated the Lord many times and bowed down before him again and again, and thus they left. The Lord remained bound up with his ropes to the grinding mortar. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 10th chapter of Krishna, deliverance of Nala, Kuvara, and Manigriva. So that is a wonderful story coming to an end there, but we are going to pick up again with chapter 11 next time, which is some more demons are coming, called Killing the Demons of Vachasura and Bakasura, and we will chant right now. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much. Haribol. See you next time for the next reading. Stay tuned.